my first question to Architect Anmol. So you mentioned about codes, like energy codes. So can you give us an idea on the energy codes governing retrofitting of building envelopes in India?
Right. So when we specifically talk about energy efficiency, the overarching building code that we currently have is the Energy Conservation Building Code and the Energy and Sustainability Conservation Building Code, ECBC and ECSBC, that have been recently, updated and launched. But as such, there is currently no particular code which is mostly focused on retrofits. So the idea is that Energy Conservation Building Code talks about in general how building envelopes should be designed, right? But like I said, that these concepts, specifically like thermal bridging or air tightness or insulation, are something that are not inherently practiced a lot in Indian context. If you see buildings from 2000s, early 2000s, they were mostly, trying to mimic what the West is doing. They were trying to, have full glazed facades or claddings or, or fancy, uh, screens over the buildings. Now, when these buildings started to get constructed, even the building owners started to face these problems and government authorities started involving themselves. Slowly and gradually, the concept of insulation has become popular, is being taken up in India. And it's only in the last 15 years that these products have actually been started to become available. If I compare with European context, there are many standards that exist, like Passive House, which separately deals with retrofit projects. But currently in India, we just have ECBC, which talks about building envelope, be it a new building or a retrofit building. Likewise, but definitely forums like these are needed so that we can discuss and we can, emphasize the need of existing buildings being retrofitted to the standards of ECBC as well.
As far as the codes and standards are concerned for compliance, in practice, in any place where they are being regulated, they are either leading or lagging to the market forces. So definitely in India, it had been the codes were more leading than lagging, partly because of the universal phenomena of the energy costs being very low anywhere. So, it doesn't matter when somebody is trying to create a, snazzy looking, fancy facade, they're likely to pay through or pass on the cost of electricity to the consumer. So, those things are changing now, though, like Anmol mentioned. There's a lot more of cutting edge developers who are leading the market and who will sort of pave the way for other developers to sort of follow their path. They have been paying electricity bills for the longest time. They never cared, probably still don't. But what they do care about is how their clients, when they want to house their activities and operate from, come up with a list of certain things that they want. Those lists are something that they are meant to, that a lot of our properties, commercial properties, are not fully occupied. So they are always wanting to listen to the potential customer. So in that sense, they are listening to the consultants who are following the codes. But the codes came in first, who are, which are more leading than in our market.
Yeah, so I think thank you, Neeraj and Anmol, for your presentation as well. Very interesting things you have covered. What Anmol said about thermal bridging, we have been promoting thermal break systems for maybe last 15 years. And what we find in India is like it's a no-brainer actually that the payback periods are roughly around 3 to, in worst case scenario, 7 years. But still, despite that, a lot of developers and a lot of clients don't want to pay the upfront extra, despite the payback period being so low. And considering like 20-25 years of life of a building, it's a no-brainer. But that's the challenge. Thermal break system in countries like Dubai, which have extreme temperatures, or in European countries, they are like I said in my presentation, 99.9% they are using it. But in India, I think hardly 1% of the projects will have that. So people like us only have to promote and try to, instill the knowledge in the end consumers, the clients, that it is worth spending that extra to have a better insulated and energy efficient building. And with the energy cost even in India going up, and like I mentioned, with the concerns about the net zero and the green things, people are trying to find ways of making their buildings more efficient. But as of now, people are generally following the codes. कि जितना गवर्नमेंट बोल रही है मैंडेट कर रही है उतना we will do that much and that's about it.
Okay, thank you for that insightful approach. So my next question to Vikas sir. So this is just in three parts. So first thing is, can you throw some light on the envelope testing methods for high rises? You could walk upon the structural and tech-enabled ones. Do they vary for residential and commercial structures? How often do you think envelopes should be tested for energy efficiency? Because the frequency matters. I think the awareness is not so much in terms of the frequency.
See, the facade testing is primarily done for structural testing, for structural loads. And nowadays, people have started getting into water penetration test, air infiltration test, because that is where also it helps in energy efficiency. If your air is leaking through the facade, obviously your building is not energy efficient. It's losing your either the air conditioned cool air outside, or it is gaining the heat from outside to inside. In either case, so a lot of companies have come up now in India also where they do facade testing in a very very thorough and detailed way. And beyond the structural integrity of the facade, it is important to also do water testing and air infiltration testing, which now people are also going one step ahead and doing structural sealant testing as well, because uh, and also the weather sealant. So the sealants are the one which ensure that there is no leakage happening, either the water or the air leakage through the facade. And as far as commercial and residential buildings are concerned, a lot of commercial buildings have full facades, whereas residential buildings generally tend to have pockets of windows and not a complete facade. So definitely the testing methodology is different in both the cases. But in either case, you can have a module set up and tested for whatever is required, like whether it be the structural integrity or water penetration test or air infiltration test. So you can do either, and all these tests can either be done in a lab where they do a full mock-up, full scale mock-up, or you can also do it on site. Structural tests cannot be done on site, but water penetration and air infiltration can be done.
So what do you think should be the frequency of testing?
See, frequency, actually, you need to test the facade at the initial stages, and then the frequency depends on the environment outside and how the building has been performing over the time, including the RCC structure. If it is a high-rise tall building, then I usually recommend a 10 years period as the frequency. Other than that, for residential, it is not that critical because you have individual units, and like Neeraj pointed out, people generally tend to not take care of things which will be borne, the cost of which will be borne by somebody else. So mostly the corporate buildings and malls where the owners, the developers are the owners at the end of the day, they tend to, focus on having a well functioning facade, and there the frequency can be less, say around 5 to 7 years.
My question to Neeraj, I think you've been working with at a global level as well. So can you give us an idea on the global trends in envelope retrofit technologies and how is it in comparison to India? I think like you've also mentioned that, some of the things are still at a very nascent stage in India, but you can still give a comparison of what is being adopted here currently and what needs to be adopted.
So one amazing product that I recently came across is being developed in India, and many years ago I had seen in my practice in the US where in school buildings, see, this is an envelope product. It's called aerogel. It has tremendous insulation properties, but it also has terrific daylight properties. As in, it's a sort of a translucent thing. It doesn't allow, it is not transparent, but it does allow daylight. So, where you would want classrooms in a school to be allowing for a lot of light, which has direct correlation with well-being of the students and their test scores. They were using many years ago. Now I've started seeing this being developed by a manufacturer here in India. I haven't seen the product yet. I think it's called Dasham Labs, but I'll need to know more about it. So these products are being developed here in India. Any other technologies? Some of these would be, like Anmol mentioned and talked a lot about, would be primarily fixing the problem areas, which is thermal breaks. So that would be, having weather sealants. You don't see too many of weather, even houses need to have weather sealants or brush seals, or you do see brush seals, but very often they are peeling off from UPVC windows, and it's poor workmanship. So workmanship and awareness of these gap areas need to be addressed as well.
Anmol or Vikas, your thoughts on how it is from a global and Indian perspective? Where do you think India should, I mean, the adoption should go in India, or anything you want to add? You can.
Yeah, see, what Neeraj has rightly said, there is a lot of technology available worldwide, but the envelope, the facades in India are still in a very nascent stage. There are very few buildings which are kind of adopting the latest technology. But like I said, India is still, unfortunately, very price sensitive market. So most of the buildings will have the bare minimum what is required, and these parts where energy efficiency, we are talking about, leakages, we're talking about thermal bridging. These are not yet, mainstream. Rather, they are very niche, and very few projects across India would have adopted these technologies. So we have a long way to go. We are still in a very nascent stage. But on our part, we are doing our bit by, introducing new age materials every now and then. Like thermal break, I told for last 15 years we've been trying to promote, but not very takers for that. So it is. I think we will take a jump when the main developers or the bigger developers, they start taking the lead and start implementing those things. Then I think a lot of technology will come into India, and we in India are quite entrepreneur, and things can be developed locally also.
Thank you. Anmol, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I completely resonate to what Neeraj sir and Vikas sir have already mentioned that we have a long way to go, but I think awareness is critical. Like we have experienced in our practices, this should propagate more, because until and unless people talk about these, is it's included in the design basis report, it will never come up to the surface, right? Because most of the developers are seeing these products or are using these products for the first time, and there is a lot of skepticism, specifically with insulating materials, because how they will be fixed, how weatherproof these materials itself they are, right? A lot of people have concerns with safety issues, fire issues, moisture ingress. So until and unless, I would say that consultants and contractors work together, these problems cannot be solved. We don't have a dearth of products. There are enough and many products currently being manufactured, being imported in India, and price is just a matter of economy of scale. The moment the demand starts to increase, the price will also come up. If you ask somebody 40 years ago that can you build a full building from glass, probably they would have also resisted. But now we are seeing full curtain glazed buildings come up in every corner of India, right? So how this dramatic shift has taken up for glass, 40 years from now, 40 years ago, people would have said that, it's so risky to move glass, and it's also heavy. It's also, something that is not very safe. But now we have developed those technologies. It's a matter of awareness, and it's a matter of, coordinating different agencies one with each other. And I would say that there is no dearth of technology in India. It is just an adoption that needs to be pushed. Just a sensitivity that needs to be brought up. and become part of projects design basis report. Only then these things will become mainstream.
Thank you for that. My next question is on passive retrofitting. So, what role do you think that passive retrofitting is playing in improving energy efficiency of buildings? I mean, building envelopes, and what challenges are associated in integrating passive design for upgrading envelopes? Anmol can answer, and I would also invite the other two to share their.
Sure. So when we talk about passive retrofits, the most simplest thing that is being done a lot in these days in buildings is the roof coating, the high SRI paint coating. It's the simplest, low cost, non-intrusive method of treating building roofs and building facades to reduce the solar radiation heat gains. So the roofs are mostly exposed to direct sun and they absorb a lot of heat, which increase the surface temperature and therefore it conducts inside to the topmost floors. So that is a no-brainer, very simple to use, and it's also being promoted and it's being adopted heavily. Coming to the second kind of passive measure, which is external shading devices. So shading essentially is not only helping us to cut down the solar ingress, but it's also an architectural feature. It's an expression of the building, a double skin or a shading element. It's not just a functional aspect, but it's also a very emotional and aesthetic aspect to the building. External shading definitely is one of the most simplest and I would say low cost solutions for retrofitting building envelopes because it is non intrusive. At the same time, uh, it helps to protect your glazing systems tremendously. So, in spite of instead of doing a double glazed unit or a high performance glass which costs 700 to 800 rupees a square feet, rather if you invest half of that amount of money in a good facade system, which is an external screen or a shading device, which also makes the building look more aesthetic, that same effect can be introduced. It's a very simple passive measure which we have forgotten from our, vernacular roots. Almost all buildings in the olden days would have chhajjas and would have, deep overhangs and there would be bamboo chicks on the outside of the windows. These are some things that we have forgotten over time, and these things have to now start to come back. When we talk about other passive measures, like we have discussed about, insulation, these again, like we said, that they will take some more time. They will need a lot more penetration of technology in the market. Other than that, something very simple and very common like operable windows. It has disappeared completely from commercial building. Now you will see very few commercial buildings which have openable windows. Mostly residential buildings only have. Now they are also, the high-end premium luxury houses. They are doing away with openable windows and they are doing with full air conditioned, centrally air conditioned houses. And even to the extent that ceiling fans are being, being removed from the houses. So I would say that rather than, focusing on the technology based setups, we should again look back to our basic roots. We've sort of forgotten how buildings were designed in Indian context, and we don't need to look at what the West is doing. There's a lot of enough inspiration that we already have in India. It is just that some technologies have become branded and they have become a statement. They are no way less expensive, they are no way easy to execute, but since they have been pushed so aggressively marketed that they have become mainstream. So that's very simple things that can be done, and they can definitely reduce up to 10 to 15% of the energy consumption for air conditioning in buildings.
Great. So my question to Vikas sir, so you spoke about smart facades. So how can smart facades help with energy efficiency in building envelope retrofits? And what are the kind of materials that are available in India?
So I think that was the basic of what we presented, and a lot of new age materials are there with the insulated panels available, thermal break systems available, and like I said, retrofitting very easy to understand in terms of the end use of the depending on the building. Like Neeraj presented a school building, so depends on what kind of a building it is. Like I gave an example of a commercial building, so it can be retrofitted with conventional systems, ensuring that you have a double facade and that inherently becomes a more energy efficient, and as at the same time it becomes aesthetically appealing also. So materials are available. Like I said, it's just the use of them is still limited to very few people. And the awareness, I'm sure with these kind of seminars happening more often, the awareness will also spread quickly and we will be able to do all those things.
One question to Neeraj. So when we speak of HVAC systems, so I think HVAC systems are a major retrofit targets for reducing energy use, especially in commercial buildings where they are continuously used. So can you walk us through the key factors to be considered while going in for retrofitting of HVAC systems in commercial buildings?
So, like I said in the previous comment, I mean, how comfort is understood, needs to be redefined in our collective understanding. The more and more, even if you take it in the conventional sense that, air temperature needs to be provided at so many degrees to everyone, it rarely happens that you are able to provide that because there are so many other variables that you are never able to do so. So to keep fighting it to meet that as a criteria is a very narrow way of looking at it. We need to sort of expand our understanding with HVAC systems, and those systems we have, utilized here and spec and at very competitive pricing, even for commercial buildings. In fact, it's probably easier for captive users, developers, than developers who are commercial developers who would lease it out or sell off their buildings. But it's still, I think it just needs to take that next leap forward. For captive developers who are using their own commercial properties, I think it's there already. It's happening.
So of late, we've seen green buildings and green building certifications catch up in India, and especially in the last 10, 15 years or so, if I am not wrong. So do you think this push for green buildings is actually driving the building envelope retrofitting? Because existing buildings also would like to get, instead of completely pulling down the building and new building a new one. So do you think that is a driver? And what other drivers are kind of pushing this retrofitting of building envelopes? It's a common question to all the three. Anybody can take it up.
See, the thing is, like I said, a lot of people are just trying to meet the codal requirements. We need to go much beyond that. And we also agree with what Anmol said that, the rerouting of the ducting also is required at many places, where what we find is in recent times, a lot of MEP and facade consultants are also interacting among themselves. Earlier, it used to be a totally disjoint function. Recently, in one of our projects, we sat through the meeting for the MEP and we came to know that the ducting, it is a hotel project, the ducting was next to the window glass. So the cold air is going to directly hit the glass, and then there will be issues of condensation and all those things will happen. So these are very fine minor points which can only occur when we take care of it as a team. This MEP and facade has also, because of the lead rating requirements, become quite interactive, and a lot of clients do understand that, and they are taking up these things and ensuring that while designing or even for retrofitting, these things are coordinated and implemented accordingly.
Neeraj, your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think we need to start utilizing a bit of technology in being able to coordinate better. I still see a lot of barrier in the industry. Maybe it is at a stage where when architects and building design engineering professionals were moving from drafting tables to AutoCAD, we are just about starting to see that kind of a concerted effort to move from CAD to building information modeling. But there are, once that happens, there'll be one model that people would be working on, and that will be some green building rating systems do address building integrated design systems like LEED does. I mean, we just need to leverage that technology. It's a matter of that. Although one needs to still recognize that such tools are expensive and licenses for such tools are few and far between. And then, when it comes to India's own infrastructure and building push in this area, these tools may not necessarily be localized, and these are all foreign. So expense, security, all of that might be the big barriers, but those can be solved. We can, at least for the commercial and on other scales, we can start moving towards such tools, which some of the green building rating systems have started. They're not promulgating it or not promoting it, but they're saying it in other ways, and we see a direct correlation with with the use of such tools.
Okay, Anmol, your thoughts on this?
So, honestly, I've also been working a lot on green building certification projects, but uh, to my dismay, that is now saturated to a sense that everybody is just following the bare minimum checklist. And that will not help because it was initiated 15 years back to bring up everyone to that baseline level. So the code compliances were also relaxed and the compliance paths were also very relaxed. It was mostly focused on design, documentation, but even today, that has not changed much. Uh, would certainly urge green building rating agencies to start publishing data of projects which have been certified up and running for the last 10, 15 years, because that really gives new developers a validation that is it worth my money? Is it worth something that we can invest and would definitely reap benefits rather than just a plate hanging on the walls of the building? So, very strongly recommend that, green building certification codes are definitely a driver, but now it's the time that they have to become more aggressive, they have to become more persuasive, and they have to start publishing a lot of data in the public domain so that uptake is increased and retrofit essentially for green building certification is something not very up right now. There are very few buildings who are going for existing building rating either because they didn't have a new building certificate initially and now they want a rating or they would go for a renewal of that rating. So that concept is also it's not very properly outlined that what happens after 3 years, what happens after 5 years. Does the building still remain green? So I think a lot of push is required from these certification agencies that they really come in the forefront, and until and unless real data is pushed and published and it is shown to the public, I think the uptake would be very less and we would still continue to the way we have been for the last 15 years.